Michael Jackson built an amusement park for himself. The world called it madness. 3 days before he died, he called his doctor to talk about loneliness. Those two facts explain almost everything the world misunderstood about Michael Jackson. And the documented record has been available for years. This is what it actually shows. If you've never found this channel before, this is what we do. We take the icons everyone thinks they know and we show you who they actually were. That's what this channel is about. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana. 2 bedrooms, 9 children. A father named Joseph who had given up on his own musical ambitions and pointed them, with documented force, at his sons instead. By the time Michael was 6, he was rehearsing under his father's supervision. By 8, he was performing professionally. Joseph Jackson told Ed Bradley on 60 Minutes in 2003 that he used a belt during rehearsals. He did not consider this abuse. He considered it preparation. Michael Jackson told Oprah Winfrey in 1993 that seeing his father made him physically ill with fear. He used that exact phrase. The Jackson 5 signed with Motown in 1969. Michael was 10 years old. The schedule wasn't built for a child, it was built for output. Consistent schooling ended. Birthdays passed without parties. The kind of ordinary afternoons that childhood is made of, gone before he was old enough to know they were gone. Berry Gordy, in his own memoir, frames that period as opportunity. Michael Jackson, 30 years later, framed it as theft. That's the key to understanding everything that came later. Eventually, the boy who would become the king of pop left Motown for Epic Records, where his solo career truly flourished. Through albums like Off the Wall and his collaboration with producer Quincy Jones on Thriller, the best-selling album of all time, he became the most commercially successful solo artist in the history of recorded music. And eventually, he tried to build the childhood he never got to have. In 1988, Jackson purchased a 2,700-acre property in Santa Barbara County and renamed it Neverland Ranch. He was 30 years old, and he built an amusement park. Not as a statement, not as excess. He had been explaining it for years. In his own words, Cananza, to anyone who asked, "I am never as happy as when I am watching a good movie or at an amusement park. I love to just have fun and play." He said that to Ebony magazine in 1992. He had been saying versions of it since his first solo interviews in the mid-70s, a teenager who described adulthood as something that had happened to him before he was ready. Neverland had a full amusement park, a zoo, a movie theater, a private train running the perimeter of the property, moving through empty rides in the California dark, for no one but him. His personal designers, Michael Bush and Dennis Tompkins, documented in The King of Style that he called it his sanctuary. Not a showpiece, not a spectacle, the one place where the external world's terms did not apply. When Martin Bashir asked him about it in 2003, Jackson said, "This is my Neverland, and if I could, I would never leave." Because outside Neverland, he had never really felt safe. That line was treated as evidence of something wrong with him. The documented record suggests it was one of the most honest things he ever said on camera. Then, the press got there first. The hyperbaric chamber photograph ran in 1986. 2 words followed, spread from British tabloids until they worked as a verdict, and once that verdict was settled, everything after was read through it. The chamber was a legitimate medical device. The photograph had been arranged by Jackson's own publicity team. Bob Jones, his publicist, documented this in his memoir. They staged it. They did not anticipate what it would become. The name stuck anyway. Then the masks, then the surgeries, then the accusations, then the trial. And after that, the public stopped asking questions. The image had been decided. What remained was filling in the details. Here's what everyone missed. The spectacle wasn't the story. It was the noise produced by a machine that had been running on his fear since he was 6 years old. His fear became profitable. That is the cleanest summary of what the industry did to Michael Jackson. Even after he became the most famous artist on earth, the machinery never stopped. Contracts got bigger, expectations got heavier, and Michael increasingly believed the industry needed him exhausted, needed him dependent, and needed him without the clarity to protect what was his. He said so explicitly in documented interviews. The press reported it as paranoia. The documented record suggests it was an accurate description of what was happening. At this point, the story the public was given ends. What the record shows is this: the insomnia was chronic. By his final years, Jackson was using propofol, a surgical anesthetic, as a nightly sleep aid. Conrad Murray testified to this at his 2011 trial. Jackson had told Murray that the propofol-induced unconsciousness was the only real rest he ever got. Not sleep. Unconsciousness. For the first time in years, his body stopped fighting long enough to rest after the 2005 acquittal, 14 counts, 5 months of trial. Jackson did not return to Neverland. Not once. The place he had called his kingdom had been photographed and searched and testified about until it no longer belonged to him in the only way that had ever mattered. The one place he had built to feel safe was gone, and the real world had never felt survivable. He spent the last weeks of his life in a rented house in Holmby Hills, preparing for 50 concerts in London with promoter AEG Live. All of them documented in subsequent testimony the same quality in those final weeks. A man trying to prepare for a performance while carrying a fear that performing had never resolved, only deferred. He called his dermatologist, Dr. Arnold Klein. Not about a procedure, he called to talk. Klein documented it. Nobody put it in the obituaries, because the public version of these stories is rarely the complete one. We cover the complete one every week. If you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Paris Jackson, in a 2017 Rolling Stone interview, described her father as a man who made breakfast, who was affectionate, who wanted his children to have the ordinary domestic life that he, by his own documented account, had never had. She said she missed him the way you miss someone specific, not a myth, a person. Lisa Marie Presley said in 2010 that the marriage had failed because neither of them had any template for what a functional private life looked like. That is a precise description. Read against the documented record of his childhood. It is also an explanation rather than a mystery. The official narrative offered 2 versions of Michael Jackson and moved between them depending on the decade. The first, a genius undone by fame, by wealth, by his own excess. The second, dominant after June 2009, a misunderstood artist, a victim of media cruelty, a talent too large for the world to hold. Both versions make the same error. Both begin with the spectacle and work backward toward a cause that fits its scale. The documented record works the other way. It begins with a 6-year-old boy rehearsing under a father whose love was conditional on performance. It follows that boy forward, through the stadiums, through the surgeries, through the amusement park built by a man trying to reconstruct something that had been taken before he knew its name, to a rented house in Los Angeles where a man who could not sleep called his doctor to talk about loneliness. Neverland was never about fantasy. It was about safety. In the end, the fantasy wasn't the performance. The fantasy was believing he had ever been allowed to be a child.